Hey guys, it's Albert. Welcome back to my recap series of Z Nation. This week we're covering Season 2, Episode number 7, Down the Mississippi, is what this one is called. And I just gotta start off by saying that episodes like this are why I love Z Nation so much. And you can broadly apply it to a lot of these episodes, but this episode in particular is really a great example of how that within this show, they do so much genre hopping, and you'll have an individual episode like this that has a flavor all its own. It's got references to all kinds of other things that are sort of in this genre, and yet it fits within the narrative of the whole series. And I love that. I love that, like in season 1, you have psychological horror, and you have a western, and all these different kinds of things. In this season, you've got all kinds of crazy, weird things. You had the Mad Max reference episode, which was really great, and all these different things. Even though, again, I didn't particularly care for the Mad Max episode, but I really do enjoy when Z Nation goes off into these sort of odd tangents, and this is definitely one of those. Very much an echo of the previous season when, not Warren, who's the guy who was the leader of the group? Dag nabbit, I forgot his name. It'll come to me in a minute, but when he was killed, the next episode, the gun show episode, was very, very stylistically modeled after a Western, right? And so you had, sort of Western style shots and Western style action, and it was all kind of like in the, prairies of the Kansas or whatever, very Western themed type episode, to the point where they even cropped down the aspect ratio of the show so that you had that extra wide Sergio Leone style frame to show all their Western style stuff in. And they repeated that in this episode. I was super excited. This one, if you want to rip off a term from Quentin Tarantino, would be more of a Southern. So they're going down to the Mississippi. Obviously it's still Z Nation. So we start off with probably one of my favorite shots of the entire series, individual framed shots. These two guys are walking down this road towards the camera. And it's a dirt road, and there's a kind of a hill behind them. And over the hill comes this truck. But it's the way the truck is set up, it has like a box thing on the top of the cab, and it's a dentistry thing, and it's painted with the teeth on the box. So for about half a second, you see coming over the hill just the teeth coming at them, and then of course the whole truck comes over the hills and you see what it is. But that one singular moment, I don't know, for me, like, there's a lot of great cinematic stuff in Z Nation. They do a lot of really neat things especially with the time constraints they're given. But in that particular thing, I was just like, that is so cool, because just seeing those sort of smiling giant white teeth coming at you is a horrifying image. And of course, it is the zombie apocalypse, so when the guy comes out of the cab of the truck and offers you free dental work and asks if you've had your teeth cleaned recently, you should run the other way, or at the very least not both sit down at the same time. Unfortunately, our two opening sequence heroes didn't realize this, and so they get taken by kind of a cartoonish little thing that just shoves them into the back of the truck, where we hear them scream, and then kind of goes silent. The guys drive off, and we are into the main meat of the episode. We meet up with our characters. They're on the run from some zombies, and they come to a boat, which is being piloted by maybe one of the best character actors in this series. Just a great, like, sort of fast talking. I say great. I mean, there's obviously a lot of great recurring characters, but this guy shows up for like 5 minutes and almost steals the entire episode. If it wasn't such a great episode, he would have stolen it. Just shows up, and he has like, I'll do whatever, it's my boat, but y'all can, of course, Vasquez is like, why don't we just shoot you and take it? And he's like, well, you could do that, but I know the river pretty well. And just, this great hillbilly style, put on, or I have no idea. I don't know, have any idea if this guy was just from around there and they picked him up, or if he's some great, just amazing character actor that's actually from England, dear boy, and he just puts that accent on when he needs to for the Z Nation fans. No idea, but either way, this guy nails that out of the park, and we see our guys, our main cast and crew, get on a riverboat and go down the Mississippi. Of course, we start off with 10K killing a zombie that's like attached to the, the motor of the boat, because that's really, it's all got to be zombies all the time. But we really kind of get this sense that we're going into a Z Nation flavored Huckleberry Finn episode, for lack of a better word, because as they're going down the Mississippi, that's the title of the the episode. They're going down the Mississippi on their little barge boat thing that they've commandeered / hired, offered not to kill the owner of. They meet our two sort of most standout characters from season 1, Sketchy and Skizzy, also from that episode that was the Western in the previous season. And they're paddling in a pedal boat. Those little things that you'll rent sometimes to go out on a lake and just... They're paddling in the Mississippi in one of those. In the zombie-infested waters of the Mississippi. They ask to be brought on board, and there's a great exchange between Vasquez and them, where Vasquez is like, no, we're not picking them up. And Doc's like, yeah, we're picking them up. They're my friends. They're like, we're not picking them up. Yeah, we're picking them up. And which I think kind of sets up, not only is it a great comedic moment in the show, but it sets up sort of the conflict we're going to see later between being loyal to the people that you know and also doing the thing that makes sense and is right in the zombie apocalypse. And you kind of set up that conflict between Doc as the sort of personal angle and Vasquez taking the more pragmatic approach. He doesn't want to take on anybody he doesn't know. He has no interest in these guys who are, for all he knows, grifters and weirdos, and he wants to leave them behind. But Doc's like, no, we're going to pick him up and take him. Eventually, they do end up picking him up. And again, you get a little bit more of that flavor of Huckleberry Finn, right? Because for one thing, they have the weird hats. Especially Sketchy, I think, is the one guy, has sort of the stovepipe hat, looks really anachronistic, takes you back to sort of that, Huck and, not Huck, I'm sorry. Well, yeah, Huckleberry and Jim on the river kind of feel with the king and the duke. If you've read those books, you know what I'm talking about. The two, con artists who are all going from town to town, lying people out of their money, basically, which is what you get these two guys doing. And, of course, the boat runs into a zombie river jam. However that works, who knows? It was a cool effect when we actually see, they have enough extras for that split second for the zombies to all just sort of up out of the water at the boat, kind of in the river. That was pretty neat. Who knows how they all got linked together or stuck there in the river. But point being, they are all there, and the team ends up, as a result of these zombies showing up, getting split up. Most of the team ends up on one side of the Mississippi, and 10K and Sketchy and Skizzy end up on the other side of the Mississippi. And here we get 10K playing the part of our Huckleberry Finn / Tom Sawyer figure. Not quite young enough, but, it's a loose sort of homage, so we'll be okay with that. And he, kind of falls in behind in the ranks with Sketchy and Skizzy, who we've already seen are pretty good at spinning some pretty fantastic yarns. And if you weren't 100% sure that these guys are absolutely liars, almost immediately Skizzy's like, I saw Sketchy go down. He went down and it was horrible. And then they see him he's fine. He's like, I'm okay. Although there was a great moment of comedy there because he's in the buried in the ground, and Sketchy's like, he's this half zombie, put him out of his misery. Which I was still confused. I was there was a part of me that's did he know that he was actually alive and wanted 10K to kill him, or is he just dumb? Because they don't quite seem dumb enough to just... Anyway, I'm not sure exactly what was going through their head there, but so they all kind of meet up together, and 10K falls in with them, and they go through this routine. And we've seen earlier on the boat, they mention that they have been pulling the Murphy routine, which is pretty, incredible considering that we know who the Murphy is, but they don't know who the Murphy is. Even though I don't think anybody avoids calling him Murphy in front of them, they don't put together that he is the Murphy, the blue dude with the weird looking teeth and the crazy eyes, whose name Murphy. Somehow they don't make that connection in their minds, or they don't care. But they go around and we see them pull this con on these backwoods boys who, they're walking through the woods, and they're like, are you trespassing or are you lost? Because if you're lost, you better leave. And if you're trespassing, anyway, so Sketchy goes to talk his way out of it. And the way he talks his way out of it is he points at Skis and he's like, you see that fella right there? Have you heard of the Murphy? And like, he has a picture, that says the Murphy underneath, and it's like a hilarious cartoon caricature of Skeezy, and Skeezy stands there like Jesus, like posed like, I am he. And 10K is, I to give him credit, he doesn't rat him out or like, say, well, I know who Murphy is. That's not him. He's got enough savvy to be like, I guess I'll go along with this. Which I've always really enjoyed 10K's attitude. Like, he's very focused on sort of staying alive, but he's also sort of a, yeah, whatever, this is cool kind of guy. And he sort of has a little bit of a happy-go-lucky attitude, despite the fact that, he has stuff that he cares about. Obviously, he was very, concerned about Cassandra in the previous episode and really cared about her. But really, he keeps his sort of a little bit happy-go-lucky and a little bit, savvy enough to go with. He's not really, 10K's not jaded or anything. He's not, but he's smart enough not to blow this con, at least on purpose. And so they convince these guys that Skeezy is the Murphy. And he has them fight them. Like, he's like, he does it on the arm, which is kind of an interesting change to what Murphy does, because Murphy always does it on the cheek, because you're a great visual, people that he's turned. Skeezy does it on the arm, and it's a great moment because he bites in for way longer than is probably necessary. And Sketchy's like, you gotta hold still or the venom won't take. You won't work. And then once he's done, they ask him, how do you feel? And the guy's like, I'm cured! And just like throws up his hands. It's a great sort of faith healer send up moments. And so they almost get away with it, but they end up being chased off because, 10K accidentally dropped something they were trying to steal from him in the process or whatever. So they're running off, and they end up stealing the tooth truck that we saw from the beginning of the episode with the big teeth on it. Which, by the way, I'm going to just stop and say I really love, in almost any visual sort of storytelling medium, when you have the heroes in a very distinctive vehicle. A lot of times, if you can have your hero driving something that instantly you know what it is, it can't be like a Honda Accord, unless it's like got flames painted on or whatever, because you just, like in a movie, you need to be look at something and say, that's the hero. And so it was neat to have that kind of vehicle in this. They take the vehicle and drive off, not knowing what's in the back, because they're in a hurry, obviously, and drive it into this little Mississippi town. Now, in the meantime, the rest of the group has washed up on the opposite shore of the Mississippi. And they start out just a little bit worried about 10K, but they know he can take care of himself, so they're not really concerned. But as the episode goes on, it becomes increasingly an issue of, is it worth going back for him? And Doc is very, very much on the side of, yeah, we got to go back. He's 10K. And I think really from Doc's perspective, especially, 10K is very much like a son to him. We know that he had kids, or he may have had kids. You know what I'm forgetting? I feel like in the past he's mentioned that he had kids before the apocalypse. Probably they're not still alive somewhere, but he definitely has this bond with 10K that very much is like a father-son bond, like a father-son bond. And 10K really has sort of a similar relationship with him, where he's lost his dad. Doc really sort of takes him under his wing, and shows him the ropes. And so 10K looks at him that way as well. And Doc's like, look, we got to go back for 10K. Like, you just got to go back for 10K. And as the episode kind of wears on, the main conflict in the group becomes how much are they committed to the mission and how much are they committed to each other. And it really evolves in such a way, and we cut back and forth between, Sketchy and Skeezy and the main group as well, but I'm going to kind of focus on the main group for the most of what their arc is, because, it's all basically one story for them, and their, moral quandary of how committed are we to the mission, because just in the last episode, or in the episode before last, we saw Warren take medicine from good people who did not even, were so good that they would not physically resist her because that was against what they believed, and take it for their people because the mission was more important. And now you have that decision coming back, being spit back in her face, and you have, Murphy, who has been, he comes across as a really interesting point here, because he hasn't been interested in being the Messiah for this whole time. He's like, I don't want to be the cure. I don't want to be the cure. And they keep telling him, no, we don't care what you want. You have to come along. It doesn't, it's bigger than just you and what you want and you trying to dodge out of this thing. So now Murphy, because of what happened in the previous episode where 10K killed Cassandra, Murphy's not happy. Murphy is really upset with 10K, and he says, "What? We gonna leave him behind? You're not gonna leave him behind after all that we've done? Yeah, sure. I'm the mission. It's not my fault. I don't want to do it, but you keep telling me we have to get to California no matter what, so we can't be wasting time going back for 10K." And Vasquez kind of agrees with him, and Doc just, flat out is not having it. He's like, no. 10K is more important. People are more important. We are a group, and the reason we stick together because that's what's worked, and we're there for each other. And it's a fascinating quandary, because you kind of get, logically you understand the side that says, he's a loss. We have to, Murphy is the mission, no matter how much we might despise him. We need to get him to California. We can't risk that going back for one person who isn't even, again, Murphy's the cure. 10K's just some guy. I'm a great guy. I love the character, but he's just one person. And in the mental math that says that Murphy has to go to California and anything can be sacrificed to get him there, it doesn't make sense to say go back for 10K. But as people, as human beings with emotions and feelings, you also really understand where Doc's coming from. This guy is basically family to us. We've killed with and for each other many times. We've, been through all this stuff in the apocalypse, so you gotta go back. And it plays out eventually where Doc, goes back on his own, takes a canoe, and it kind of sort of goes back and forth all the way up till near the end of the episode. Now, while all that's happening, Sketchy, Skeezy, and 10K have rolled into this really interesting little community with their dental bus. And they're met by a guy who's sort of a kind of, jovial southern gentleman who meets them and doesn't really question why they're driving the dental bus as opposed to the other guy. And Sketchy and Skeezy, for all of their potentially dumbness, and it's still not exactly clear how much they know and how much they don't at any particular time, they are great at talking. Especially Sketchy. He comes up with, just instantly, he's rolling with it. He's like, oh yeah, we picked up this from some other guys. We're the new guys. Those other guys, who can count on them, but we get the job done. Not even knowing what the job is, just sort of rolling on with whatever the mayor's saying. He's like, yes, that's us. And they make up a whole story. I forget what all the names were. I remember they called 10K Renfield, which I thought was funny and weird reference to Dracula, and said that he was mute, which with, again, 10K just sort of falling right in, like, starts signing stuff. I have no idea if his character is actually supposed to know how to sign or if he was just making things up. But they call him a mute, and the mayor just accepts it, and we kind of see, we get into this community that exists. And what we see, they find out, oh, there's zombies in the back of that truck. Oh, we did not realize that. And they're kind of just sort of, again, rolling with it because they don't know what's going on. And we see that this community has harnessed the zombies for labor. Because what we see is that there's, as we pan across, we see a zombie wheel with the zombies going around in a circle. And that's something that I'd actually theorized with some friends. A friend of mine, Joseph Devon, brought up the potential sort of physics-breaking idea of having zombies just turn a wheel because they never have to eat and they're never going to die. So all you got to do is have like a human in front of them and they'll keep turning. And that's what we see here. It was a really interesting, I think, unique idea. I've never seen it in any other zombie media, but it was definitely cool to see that, but even more so than just the interesting, like, what if we could use zombies for power idea, was the parallel, the very obvious parallel in my mind that was being made between the way they were using zombies and the way the South used to use slaves. There's several different lines of dialogue that are dropped that make it really, really sort of obvious that that's the point that's being made. And it kind of just builds onto at least the thing that I think the show's been saying for a while, is that these zombies aren't just mindless monsters, which is the topic of one of my favorite books ever of all time. This book is full of spiders, and all of y'all should read that book because it's awesome. But that idea that it's not okay to use the zombies as labor because that there is still something human about them is really an interesting one. It's not something that I think you would see in really any other show, but they're really, I think, again, this is my theory. I can't guarantee they're going to pay this off, but there seems like they come back again and again to this idea that the zombies are not completely gone from their humanity, that there's some spark of humanity left and may be able to be reclaimed. And so 10K and Sketchy and Skeezy get involved with this place. And of course, because it's a 10K centric episode, 10K meets a girl. I think at this point, it's just a trope now. 10K meets, or at least sees a girl that he's interested in. Which, poor guy, man, like the biggest sort of television set of blue balls ever cannot meet a girl that will stick around to save his life. In this one, at least, it was nice because he got some dialogue with her, unlike the lady from the Zombie Road episode, where he sort of talks to her. She calls him aside, and she's like, "What are you doing?" And sort of has this story about how that she's gonna burn down the place and give her husband mercy because her husband became a zombie, and he's there as one of those slaves. And again, 10K, nothing happens with that. But it sets up sort of her oh, these people aren't all that great. Like, this place might have some issues. And we bear that out a little bit later when the two actual drivers of the dental van show up. And they accuse Sketchy and Skeezy of being, thieves, which they were. And then... and I forget what the guy's name is, so you're going to have to forgive me, but the Hispanic head of the Zetas shows up, and we find out that this little town is one of his satellite operations. And here we really get an interesting look into him, because his reaction to everything that's going on is, it's almost like amusement. You expect him to be this kind of cold, brusque psychopath, and he kind of is, but when he's dealing with this, the southern guy who's the mayor or in charge of this town or whatever, he's very sort of, accommodating, for lack of a better word. He doesn't like, oh, I hate this guy, he's so dumb. He just sort of goes along with everything that he's saying. He seems to respect him because, or maybe not respect him, but at least understand that he needs to treat him well because he's one of his lieutenants, underlings, for lack of a better word, and he needs to keep that relationship solid. And so they hold a trial. They hold a trial for Sketchy and Skeezy and 10K, at which point Sketchy starts going off about everything. Like, he gets a chance to defend himself, and he goes off in his Southern lawyer style, saying stuff that makes no sense or is just, like, blatantly patronizing. Like, I know that y'all wouldn't put up with me saying a bunch of $10 words and flattering y'all because you people are too good for that. You're too good to be flattering into giving me a great verdict. And they're all like sitting there like nodding like, yeah, we are. And the Zeta boss just sits there and watches the whole thing. Like, he's getting into it. He gets into the whole speech that Sketchy's given. And you're starting to think like, is he going to let them go? Because my first instinct was he's just going to shoot him. Like, Sketchy's going to stand up and start yammering on. And Zeta Boss is just going to flat out kill him because he doesn't have time. But no, apparently Zeta Boss has not had this much fun in a long time. And so he lets Sketchy talk for his like half an hour of afternoon or whatever, telling how that, again, there's no cogent thing. At one point he's drawing on a chalkboard and it's like, a picture of a puppy and like some, equations or something. It doesn't make any sense. And, comes into something, in a summation, if it does not fit, you must acquit, and all this other stuff. And the boss comes, sort of claps, and he's like, that's a pretty good speech, man, but you're guilty. Which, I don't know. Again, I'm sure that I know that he's a cold-blooded killer, but it was just so much fun. So they go to hang, and of course, at this point, we get back to, sort of to merge up the narratives. The group is about to leave. They've sort of been waiting by this bridge that, they think that, that's the nearest way that 10K would get across, while 10K's, being hung at this point. And they see the girl from earlier, like, throw a bag of guns over the bridge, over like a barricade on the bridge, and jump over. And as they're about to leave, and we, of course, then we know that she'll clue them into the fact that 10K is there and about to be hung. And they come to the rescue. They do the obvious Western thing, right? Where they drop the guys, everybody hangs, but not long enough to actually break their necks, because of course that would be the end of the road for 10K and Sketchy and Skeezy. So, they shoot him down from the hanging with pistols, because that's something you can do. Just shoot a rope from like 50 feet away. No big deal. I'm fine with it. It's genre stuff. I get it, but it doesn't actually work that way. And 10K and Sketchy and Skeezy get away. And the town, I think, burns. I know that we see the girl give her husband mercy, and we see Sketchy and Skeezy kind of run off. Again, get separated. I say get separated. They say, we're good here. And like, they're hauled up inside the medical van with all zombies all coming. 10K's like, you're going to get run over. He doesn't say it like that though. I don't know why I said it like that, but he's trying to get him to go. And finally he's like, all right, you're lost. And Sketchy and Skeezy just kind of like cuts to them like, well, what are we doing now? He's like, I don't know. I thought I was going to make a plan up as I went. And of course they're going to survive, because these guys are the cockroaches of the apocalypse. And we move on. 10K and the rest of the group, get out of harm's way, and we're out of yet another amazing episode of Z Nation. And really, it was amazing. It may be one of my favorites this year so far. That one, the Zombie Baby, was really good, although it wasn't as tight. I feel like it had a few things that maybe dragged a little bit, but I mean, with this, it was really true to the genre that they were sort of paying homage to. It felt like, its own sort of unique Mississippi Western style of movie. All of the hillbillies and everybody were just, really, really well played and acted. And even the whole sequence with Zeta Boss, being the judge and everything, all that stuff I think really, really worked for this episode. So I'm very excited. The next episode, as we've seen in the previews, the Zombie Collector, I'm very, very pumped for. And I love, again, it's one of those ideas that actually makes sense for the zombie apocalypse, that like if somebody famous died and you could get your hand on their zombie, like how cool would that be? And the idea of that going forward, I'm really looking forward to the next episode. I hope you are too. I'm still loving this season. It keeps moving forward and having new things to look at and think about, and just, I don't know. This show, although occasionally on an individual episode I think falters, is really brilliantly crafted overall. And it's fascinating because each individual episode to me is a standalone thing. Like, you can watch this episode not really having, I mean, you probably want to know a little bit about, 10K and Murphy going back and what had happened with Cassandra. That stuff plays a part in this. But stylistically and story-wise, it's very self-contained. And almost every single episode of Z Nation does that, where you'll have an individual episode that continues the plot and really does a good job of moving things forward, but also is its own story all by itself and has its own things that you can enjoy. And I think a lot of TV shows sort of struggle with that. Like, it's hard to go back and watch an individual episode of Breaking Bad, usually, unless it's one of the bottle episodes like The Fly. And then it's hard to go and, sort of, with a lot of other network television, it takes forever for anything to happen because it's all sort of individual episode stuff. And in this, you get a really great mix of both worlds, and I just love it. Love Z Nation. Love the way they're going. Keep it up, guys, who are making Z Nation. And I will be back next week to cover the next episode.